This is The Void on our 31 spooky movies of Halloween. The Void is a beautiful, bizarre love letter to the 1980s horror movies of old. It feels like someone took all the best parts of John Carpenter's The Thing, Hellraiser, and H.P. Lovecraft, put on a little bit of Barry White, let them all get down to business, and then unexpectedly threw them into a blender and said, you know what, let's add some more existential horror and habanero peppers. The plot involves a small-town cop who finds an injured man on the side of the road and brings him to a nearby abandoned hospital. Seems innocent enough, right? Well, in this movie, absolutely nothing is innocent, and things go bad in the worst possible way. Well, things go bad for the people in this movie, the characters. For those of us watching it, and for those of us who love horror, things go exactly the right way. So, what kind of bad things are we talking about? Very bad things. There's a mysterious cult outside, there's weird hallucinations, and, oh yeah, people start turning into grotesque tentacle monster things. Monday, am I right? As it turns out, this hospital is not just a hospital. It's a gateway to something much, much worse. A movie like The Void does not mess around. It is dark, it is creepy, and it feels like a bad acid trip in the best possible way. Not that I know what an acid trip feels like, I'm just guessing based on things that I've read. There's very little humor here. So if you were hoping for a few lighthearted moments to break up the terror, sorry buddy, you're out of luck. The whole movie feels like one long descent into the mouth of madness, and that's only because that's exactly what it's going for. The atmosphere is thick with dread, and the filmmakers really nail that sense of impending doom, that idea that something bad is coming, and you can't do a thing about it except try to survive it. Now, let's give credit where credit is due in this movie. Let's talk about the retro practical effects, because they are absolutely fantastic. Forget CGI. The Void goes all in on old school, gooey, grotesque, Vaseline monster effects that looks like they crawled right out of the sphincter of a 1980s horror movie. There's something so satisfyingly gross about the practical creature designs here. Flesh twisting, bodies warping, tentacles sprouting out of places they definitely should not be. And that's a lot of places in the human body, I know. But this is still the kind of body horror that makes you squirm in your seat. In the best way possible. You have creatures that look like they were designed by someone who had way too many nightmares or fantasies about octopuses, and strangely enough and disturbingly enough, I think I'm here for it. Now, when The Void wants to scare you, it doesn't just throw in a cheap jump scare your way and call it a day. Nay, nay, my friends. No. This movie goes all out with its terrifying imagery. Okay, there's one scene in particular where a character starts turning into a monstrous, tentacled abomination right before your eyes, and it's one of those moments that you want to take your eyes away from the screen, but you just can't. The transformation scenes in this movie are next level disturbing, and the creature designs are so delightfully twisted that they stick with you long after the credits roll. And quite frankly, that's my kind of horror movie, something along the line of The Exorcist or Hereditary, the movie that bothers you long after you've watched it. But while we are heaping praise on the effects and atmosphere, let's take a moment to acknowledge that The Void is not perfect. It does suffer from a slight case of pacing issues. There are moments when the movie slows down to catch its breath. And while that is usually a good thing in horror, here it feels a bit much, like it's slowing down a little too much. You're left wondering when the next terrifying thing is going to happen. But on the bright side, when it does happen, it's usually worth the wait. It's just that getting there can occasionally feel like a slog through hip-deep mud. Now that's not a deal breaker, but let's just say the movie could have used a bit more adrenaline in those slower moments. I mean, come on, we just did Ghost Story yesterday, and that movie should have been titled Pacing Issues. So yeah, don't worry about The Void, it's fine. Now, everything said, when the film picks up the pace, it is all in. And the final act is where things really go cuckoo nutty. We're talking full-on cosmic horror with portals to other dimensions, giant tentacled monstrosities, and reality itself starting to break down. By the time you get to the end, you're either going to be fully on board with this insanity, or you're going to be sitting there thinking, what the heck did I just watch? Either way, you can't say The Void doesn't commit to its vision. Some people think that some of the people who made this movie should be committed. Like yesterday. This is the most Lovecraftian movie I have ever seen, and speaking of that ending, let's just say it's one of those mind-bending, reality-warping conclusions that leaves you with more questions than answers. It's the kind of ending that makes you want to sit down with a notebook, a magnifying glass, and a Sherlock Holmes hat and try to figure out exactly what just happened, but then you realize maybe that was the point. Maybe The Void wants to leave you feeling a little bewildered, a little confused, and even a little lost. Welcome, my friends, to cosmic horror. It's not here to hold your hand. It's here to take your hand and then put a used Kleenex in it that's full of snot and probably COVID. In the end, The Void is a love letter to retro horror, full of practical effects, creepy cults, and creatures that would make even the most seasoned horror fans squirm. It's not a perfect film, with the pacing dragging on at times, and the plot occasionally feels like it was scribbled down in the middle of some kind of fever dream, but it is a wild, creepy ride that's well worth taking if you're a fan of old-school body horror and cosmic nightmares. So if you've been craving a movie that's equal part terrifying and bewildering with just a side of tentacles, no judgment, then The Void is your ticket to some seriously creepy fun and a perfect addition to your 31 spooky movies of Halloween.